check under your bed, look in the closet, but the monsters are all here on this monster review from the Dwarven Vault. Hello everybody, it's me, Riffraff Hornhelm, and I'm back again with another presentation from the Dwarven Vault, and today we have a monster review. Now in today's monster review, we're going to take a look at yet another devil, a greater devil, one of my personal favorites, the Pit Fiend. That's an awesome looking creature that looks exactly like, yeah, okay, that's the picture that's in the book, the original monster manual. And of course, that's where we draw this from, is from the original monster manual for use with Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, and more specifically at the time, first edition rules 1E. So what do I mean when I say, well, that's a picture? Well, if you take the time to read the actual description in the original monster manual, there really isn't one. You know, it can fly because it shows it in the move statistic. And you don't really know what the attacks are because they're kind of weird looking. One is like 7 to 12 and the other is like 5 to something. Well, that's because he's holding weapons. Stands 12 feet tall, and it has a tail that it can use to grab its opponent and hold it in place. No poison or anything, just hold it in place. As far as the description, that's pretty much it. Now, it talks a lot about what it can do, and it is 12 foot tall, and of course it's a greater devil. It's very evil. These are all individually named, whatever the imagination of your dungeon master chooses, or from one of the many pre-written scenarios, but that's kind of open. They have 65% magic resistance. They have -3 as an armor class, and they have 13 hit dice. 12 feet tall. This is not some piker. They're considered one of the very strongest and most evil of the greater devils, and they serve as the personal bodyguard for Asmodeus. Once again, within the context of the game, there is no religious stuff here. This is just what's in the books and how it applies to Dungeons & Dragons. Well, this has always been one of my favorites to use, and I have to say that my personal view of how they looked was based on the illustration provided here in the book. Turns out that when you read this closely, that may not be what it actually looks like. You can kind of change this an awful lot if you want to based on the written description. Now, like all devils, it shares some attributes that all devils have, and I'm going to tag my general video on devils at the end of this, so you can view that if you want to. They're all evil. This guy radiates a 20-foot globe of evil around him that you have to save against magic, otherwise you're going to be affected by that. And of course it has I mentioned earlier, a tail that can hold you in position. If it successfully hits you, it can hold you there while it continues to beat up on you with either its Ankus-like weapon, that's not really well defined either, but it's Ankus-like, or a jagged club. Nice stuff, right? And of course it's exceptionally intelligent, as well as being evil. I mean, these are nasty critters no matter how you want to look at it. They have an 1800 strength, and they have a rather long list of specific powers that they can do either once per melee round or once per turn, depending on what the actual action is. Though surprisingly, the list of magical actions that it can do compared to some of the other devils is fairly limited. Things like, detect magic and wall of fire and pyrotechnics and hold person and polymorph self. There's a list there. And on the surface, you would think it's pretty impressive, but if you compare it to some of the other devils there, it's actually fairly limited. Now, it can do a symbol of pain. I think that's once a day or once a week, something like that, but it affects up to however many people are within range. And if you fail your save, which I believe is a save for magic, You then have a sorely reduced ability to hit. It's like -4, and your dex is down by -2 or something like that. And it screws you up if you're trying to attack it. But having said that, once again, compared to some of the other devils out here, fairly limited as to what it can do overall with its magical abilities. Now, of course, like all devils, it has the ability to gate in. It has a 20% chance of gating in, I think it's 1 to 3 or 2 to 5 bone devils. And it has a 70% chance of being able to gate in yet another pit fiend. That would be rather unpleasant. And that actually has happened in both dungeons I have played in, as well as some adventures that I've run. They're nasty critters, but they're more of an upfront fight you type of critter. Because they have 65% magic resistance, they're fairly good at defeating magic and so forth with what they have. And of course, like many devils, this one as well can regenerate itself. I believe it's 2 hit points per round. It's either round or turn, but I'm pretty sure it's round. And that makes them a very nasty opponent because it's very difficult to kill them unless you're able to overwhelm them with many, many hits at once. And of course, with a devil, doesn't really kill them anyways. But of course, banishing them back to their home plate is not exactly the worst result either. Has any of our Hornhelm brethren or friends had a direct experience with a actual pit fiend? And of course the answer is no. Because frankly, any smart dwarf is going to stay away from any scenario that has even a remote chance of something like this showing up. Now, of course, in the world of dungeon masters and actual players, it's a bit different. And the response, of course, from the DMs and the players out there as to, how would you rank this character, they ranked it as pretty strong. Not as strong as I thought, though. The DMs were tending to rank this about a 7 or 8. More towards 7.5, 8 is what the average worked out to. And on the actual player side, they ranked it as 7 to 8. If you have a good, solid character, you can definitely have a fighting chance with something like this. If you're a low-level character as well, low-level characters generally die when they run against high-level characters, and a devil is a very, very competent opponent, no matter what devil you go up against. Greater devil, yes, but of course an archdevil is even worse. So really, a very tough customer. I will continue to look at it in my mind based on the picture that I saw in the monster manual for the first time all those many, many moons ago. But to be honest, as a DM, you have some freedom with this. This really isn't well specified. It's big and nasty, and it has some specific weapons, but beyond that, you have a fair amount of freedom as to what you want this to look like. So, interesting, of course, as all devils are. Very dangerous, of course, as all devils are. And one to watch out for if you run into it. But once again, know what you're up against. Spend your time learning about the types of creatures that you're liable to run into when you're on an adventure. If you're being told that you're going to go on an adventure in the 9 hells or something like that, you want to spend a fair amount of time reading up on devils. So that, my friends, is the Pit Fiend. We hope you found today's presentation to be interesting, amusing, educational, all that kind of good stuff. If you did, please be so kind as to leave us a like. Consider subscribing if you haven't. But by all means, come back and see us again real soon. We thank you so much for your kind support. Take care, everyone. Always remember, dwarves rock!